You're listening to episode 998 of the Father Bill's podcast. Welcome back. This week's episode is being offered by, or the homily is being offered by Father Dominic Sternhagen, our parochial vicar, and the title is Pray Always, given on the 29th Sunday in Ordinary Time, 2025.
I remember very clearly as a child praying the Rosary as a family. That was something that my parents would attempt to get us to do. It was always a struggle, but they would put on the Rosary. It would be streaming out from KBVM FM. Some of you might be old enough to remember that. And they had a beautiful Rosary on there prayed by an Irish priest, Father Kevin Skellen. And I say beautiful because now I can look back on it and see how beautiful it was. But at the time, it was torture. Father Kevin Skellen would pray the Rosary in a very meditative way, God rest him, beautiful way. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women. Blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. And we're just down there, oh no, this is going to take forever. When you're young, half an hour is a lot longer than when you're older. Half an hour is like days, And so I remember that very clearly. And so then, of course, as a child being here in a church like this, I would hear a gospel like this, and it would say, it's necessary to pray always. I think, oh my gosh, that's horrible. It's terrible. If I could barely make it through half an hour, praying always, that's a life of torture. And of course, that's not what Jesus is talking about. He's not saying we're supposed to pray rosaries always. We're supposed to get down on our knees always. But if he's not saying that, then what is he talking about? What is prayer? What does prayer mean? And that's something that we have to think about. And as I was older and I was in seminary and I was reading the Catechism of the Catholic Church, which is this beautiful collection of all of our Catholic teachings, the fourth section is a beautiful meditation on prayer. It gathers together all of the Church's teaching on prayer. And at the beginning of that section, when it's talking about what prayer is, it gives this little quote from St. Therese of Lisieux. And she says that for me, prayer is a simple lifting up of my mind and heart to God. A lifting up of my mind and heart to God. And I thought, oh, that's beautiful. That's what prayer is. And if that's what prayer is, I could do that all the time. Like I could bring prayer into everything that I'm doing. I could make God a part of every aspect of my life. And that's that invitation to pray always. Is an invitation to bring God into everything that we do, to speak to God, to continue that conversation throughout every aspect of our lives. That's a beautiful thing. But if you notice, that's not exactly the type of prayer that it's talking about in the gospel and in the first reading that we have today. The first reading that we have today, Moses lifting up his arms, and as he lifts up his arms, Israel triumphs. And as his arms fall down, Israel starts to lose. And then in the gospel as well, this widow who's constantly pestering this judge until she finally gets what she wants. And God is like, we have to pray in that same way. So he's talking about something different. And that's because that word prayer is an older English word. I pray thee, you might hear in Shakespeare or something, which means I ask you. That's what prayer means. To pray for something is to ask for something. We have our word petition. A petition comes from the same root. It's asking something. And so that's a particular type of prayer. It's called the prayer of petition, but that's what Christ is talking about in this gospel today. He says it's incredibly necessary to make prayers of petition, to ask for things. And we, as good, materialistic Americans, have trouble believing that, right? And I'm speaking for myself, right? It doesn't seem real. It doesn't seem like this is doing anything. And so there's a great little book on prayer by C.S. Lewis called Letters to Malcolm. And when I was reading that, Lewis talks about the efficacy of prayer. And he says it's funny, we don't think that way about any other aspect of our lives. Lewis gives the example. He says, we're sitting at table and somebody needs the salt across from us. We don't think, oh, God knows they need the salt. God will get them the salt if they need the salt, And we don't. We have to pass them the salt. And if we don't, they don't get the salt. And the spiritual world is much more real than this world in which we live, this material world. Spiritual things, relationships, love, those are the most real things in our lives. And so entering into prayer, praying for people, making that prayer of petition, that's incredibly powerful. We've been given this incredible spiritual power that is prayer. But we have to do it. We have to ask for things. We have to ask God's blessing. We have to pray for people. God is depending on us to do that. We might think, well, God's nuts. Why would he do that? Why would he depend on me? But why does God depend on me for anything? All the people in my life who I help, if I don't help them, they don't get helped. God doesn't magically solve problems that he's given to me. God respects each one of us so much that he's given us this incredible power and ability. And that manifests in prayer. So we have to do that. We have to pray for others. And if we do, amazing things can happen. But what about ourselves? Someone was talking to me after the last Mass, and they were like, well, I had this horrible situation of pain and difficulty and suffering in my life, and I was praying to God to take it away, and it didn't happen. But she was like, but now, far after the fact, I understand. And that's because prayer, fundamentally, this prayer of petition, when we pray for ourselves, it's leading us into that first part that we talked about, which is relationship with God. So when I'm praying for something for myself, God is going to respond by giving me relationship. God's going to respond by entering into my life, by encountering me in that. He's not going to magically solve it. He doesn't magically take away our sufferings, but he helps us to understand them. So in the difficulties that you have, in the struggles that you have, sometimes when you feel you don't even know that God exists, you have doubts, pray to God. Ask God to come into your life. And don't just pray to God, when you're half distracted. Take apart some time, go to a place where no one else is around so they don't think you're crazy, and speak to God out loud. Talk to God like a person. Ask him for help. Ask him to come into your life. Because I guarantee you he will. And your life will be transformed. But watch out, because when you let God into your life, you have no idea what's going to happen.
Thank you again, Father Dominic, for the homily. And I have to admit that as I think about how I was thinking in my life and praying, one of the things that I think I learned, and I think we all need to learn, especially in our schools, is not just asking what I want to do with my life, but asking God, praying to God and saying, God, what do you want me to do with my life? And I think, as you say, as it closed your homily, you never know what's going to happen. You have no idea. Though it'll be certainly, whatever it is, it'll be dynamic and full of excitement and, of course, full of God's presence. Folks, if you have any questions or comments, just go to my website, fatherbill.org. There you can find things like my blog, my podcast, have a liturgy page, various photos, etc., some links as well. And go there. And you can also email me from the actual web page, the main page of the website. And I will certainly do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. May God bless you and have a great week. Bye-bye.